Hi, I'm Rick Dior, and today we're going to look at the Canopus Zelkova Snare Drums. This is part 10 of my Snare Drum of the Week series. So these are, even now, they haven't been out that long, these are kind of legendary snare drums. They have a great reputation, and they are great drums. Canopus is a great drum company. They make fantastic drums, great drum sets. If you haven't tried one of their drum sets, I definitely recommend doing that. And all their snares are great. So kind of reminds me a little bit of the Yamaha older made in Japan kind of stuff. It's very meticulous, beautiful sounding, beautiful looking, but simplistic too. All right. So we have the 5-inch drum here on my left, your right, and the 6.5-inch drum on my right, your left. And I use these two drums all the time in the studio. I don't use them live too much unless I'm playing a really loud gig and I'm not mic'd well. For that, they're perfect because they are very, very loud drums. They have an aspect of them that just kind of breaks right through a mix. So it's not the best all-round snare. So if I had to choose one snare, you guys are always asking me that, it wouldn't be this one. But it's not because it's not an amazing snare drum, it's just not an all-round snare. It's got a thing, it's got a vibe to it. Definitely different than any other drum. It feels great when you play it. It's really solid. And the drum is really solid. The drum is made out of one solid piece of Zelkova wood. I'll show you the inside of it in a minute here. I'll take the heads off and I'll show you both drums. Probably made on a lathe. I'm not positive about that, but I would think that's how they do it. And it's not a steam bent drum, it's not a stav drum, and it's not a ply drum. It's one piece of wood, and I think they use a stump of a tree, and then they just hollow it out. And it's got kind of a shape like this, so it's rounded slightly. These are 8-lug drums, not 10 lugs, so which is fine. To me, like I always say, it doesn't matter, 8 or 10. When you talk about a 6-lug drum, like a Ludwig Pioneer and some others, then you might get into some tuning issues with particular heads, especially animal skin heads. Now the heads I use on these are a little different than the regular Remo, Ambassador, and Diplomat that you see me normally use. I always experiment with lots of different kinds of heads on all my drums. And these particular heads, after many years, and I say many years, I got this drum in 2007, this 5, and I got this drum in 2010, this 6.5. So they're pretty old. They've been making them for a long time. They've probably made maybe a couple thousand of each of these, I would think, by now. But I think this is number 450 or something, and this is number 134. We'll look inside. There's a tag inside. We'll check that out in a minute. So, you know, the drums do have a little bit of age on them, but that wouldn't make too much of a difference. The shells are the same, and the wood is very, very hard. I can't remember what the Janka rating is, but I'll look it up and put it in the description. It's got die-cast hoops, which are great. You know how much I love those. They dry the drum up just a little, which needs it because the drum rings forever. It's got the Canopus strainer, as you see there. Very, very simple. Nothing much to it. It works great, smooth. It's got no adjustment on the butt plate, okay? So don't look for that. It's a very, very simple drum. The Canopus snares, which are great as well. I kept everything original. But back to the heads. So these heads are Evans Level 360. This one's an orchestra head, because I really like it. It's pretty thin. It's like a Diplomat. And this one's a G2 Level 360, which is a thicker head. So I like these particular heads on these drums. One thing about the Level 360 heads, they sit up a little higher than the Remo heads, so they're extremely flat on these bearing edges. Okay, which does not work well for the older drums that don't have really perfect bearing edges, just so you know. The Remo heads are better. They have more of a forgiving factor there. These, though, with really well machined, like made in Japan drums that are modern, Tama drums, you know, they work great because they sit high up there and tuning them is a breeze. Now the tuning for these drums is as follows. This drum, my basic tuning, is a G on the top and an E on the bottom. This drum is an A on the top and an F sharp on the bottom. But I do tune them up and down, obviously, but what you're hearing now is my basic tuning for these. So for this 5-inch drum, it's an A. So I like that tuning a lot. Okay, feels good, speaks well, and it's very sensitive. And this is a little bit lower. It's a G. It's also very sensitive, but this is a big, fat sound. Records great. And you could even tune it lower. I don't feel like these drums have a huge tuning range. Not like the Yamaha Maple Customs, drums like that. So they sound good in a very specific range. So this drum sounds good anywhere from an F to an A. Sounds really, really great. After that, when you tune it lower, it tends to bottom out pretty quickly. I'm not sure why that is, but I think it has something to do with the bearing edges. Now, these are just my experiences. You may have some different experiences. And these are these particular drums. I've never owned any other Zelkovas besides these two. So, you know, they may be different. They also make an 8-inch drum, a 14x8. I did try that one. That was a little much. That would be the drum I would get if you want a really low-tuned Zelkova. I would figure you could tune that thing down, the top head down to an E easily and get a huge sound out of it, okay? So what we're going to do, I think that covers most of it. We're going to open up these drums and I'm going to show you what the inside looks like, and then we'll go over to the drum set and we'll play them there. So here's the inside of the 6.5-inch drum. I'll show you the label here. So it's HS 1465. Try to muffle this bottom head here. So this drum was made in 2010. And you see it's number 455. So there are well over 1,000 of these now. So it's kind of a earlier one. Show you the beautiful shell. Once again, this is Zelkova wood. It's also known as akagi or redwood in Japan. And as I said before, it's an 8-lug drum. I have the original bottom head on there. And it's got the Canopus snares, the original snares on there. And we'll show you these bearing edges, which are pretty incredible. So you see that. Very, very sharp. That's why I like these 360 heads I'm going to put on here, because they lay really well on these kind of sharp bearing edge drums. And now I'll show you the shape of the drum where it kind of bows out. You see that. So it's one piece of wood. So it's not steam bent or anything, and not staff. It's actually one piece of wood carved out of a stump of a Zelkova tree. Beautiful drum, beautiful grain. Find some of this stuff and make some sticks out of it. And now we'll show you the 5. So you see this right here. And this is a very early one, 137. And it's HS 1450, which is the 5. One different guy on here, so I did. Yeah, it's pretty much the same. Now I'm going to come around here and show you the badges. They're different. This is a real early badge. It's kind of greenish, hard to tell with the phone, but in person Looks blue with the phone, but it's more green. And we'll show you the 6.5 badge. So they're slightly different. I've seen different iterations of this. They also make an anniversary version of this drum, which is beautiful. It's black. It's got kind of gold highlights. And once again, these drums will cost you, you can buy one used, but new they're about $2,200, so they're very expensive. And these kinds of things, they look like cracks and stuff. They're not. It's very smooth. It's just the nature of the open grain wood. And thickness, I would say it's about like a 1/2 inch thick. See where my fingers are spread there, more or less. But again, one piece of wood, most likely made on a lathe. I'm not sure though, so don't quote me on that. So really beautiful workmanship. I don't know of a lot of drums that are made like this. Again, not steam bent, carved out of one piece of wood. So we'll put the heads back on. We'll go over to the drum set. All right, so here we are at the drum set. We'll play the 6.5 drum first, unmuffled. And let's put some muffling on here. Now, a lot of times I will muffle this drum. So like I said earlier, this drum is a big powerhouse, okay, huge powerhouse. Now, if I want a higher pitched version of the same thing, normally rather than just cranking this one up, I just put the 5 on there. All right, this is one of those drums that I do that with. I don't, like I said, I don't do a lot of different tunings necessarily. I just use a different version of the same drum. So let's put the 5 up here. And this would be what I would consider just the middle range tuning, but it's going to be high because it's a very high pitched drum. How can I say it? It's got a lot of balls. It's just big and fat and feels great. It's very, very powerful. It is a very loud drum, so if you're playing very light music, it sounds fine for playing jazz. It's not my first choice because I feel like it just sticks out even when you play it quietly. But for any kind of rock drum or backbeat drum, it cannot be beat. So we'll see you next time.